than 2 years after the beloved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles made their controversial debut on the Nintendo Entertainment System, they emerged from the sewers once more, but this time, they came to kick some shell. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, and as NES games go, this one's totally tubular, dude. Strange as it may seem in regard to a game starring 4 slimy amphibians who spend their time in a sewer, Turtles 2 was a pretty refreshing release. Coming in the two-toed footprints of its 1989 NES predecessor, it was exactly the kind of game Turtles fans wanted in the first place. It was tight, it was action-packed, and unlike Konami's first Turtles game, it actually utilized the Turtles license. You see, instead of the nameless foes they concocted for the original, Konami packed Turtles 2 with plenty of familiar faces from the TMNT cartoon and line of action figures. There's the mutant thugs Bebop and Rocksteady, the scientist-turned-insect Baxter Stockman, Dimension X's brainy criminal boss Krang, not to mention enough Mousers and foot soldiers to test any player's TURTLE power. Trivial as it may sound in retrospect, actually having Turtles characters in a Turtles video game was a pretty big deal. Relative to the disappointment of the original game, in which you could only identify a handful of the faces attached to the asses you were kicking, there was something very satisfying about finally duking it out with the Foot Clan's most notorious alumni. At least, the ones who trained in the cartoon. Turtles 2 is about more than just faces and theme songs, though. It's also a far better game than its predecessor, dropping the clunky platforming implemented in the original NES game to focus on a simpler, pure beat-em-up design. It just slams you with enemy swarms, and you have to fight your way through them using a very straightforward approach. Clear each group, move on, defeat the boss, cowabunga, go to the next level. As with any beat-em-up, combat is the game's focus, and fortunately, it's a complete departure from that of the first Turtles game. Konami provided the characters with a more diverse set of abilities. In addition to a standard attack, they could also kick enemies in midair, they could perform powerful jump attacks. I mean, the Turtles' abilities do seem limited by contemporary standards, but they were definitely an improvement over the prior game, to say the least. In fact, the simplicity was part of its charm. You knew what you could do, and you knew how to do it. The only challenge was to actually survive the Shredder's clan of ninja thieves. The gameplay may lack variety, but the bosses force you to learn attack patterns. Objects in the environment can be used as weapons. The enemies force you to really manage your health and fight smart. These design elements help keep things interesting. Like any great beat-em-up, the somewhat one-dimensional nature of the gameplay doesn't spoil the pizza. And as sure as mutagenic ooze can turn pet turtles into amphibious shadow warriors, this is a great beat-em-up. In fact, tossing the game's cooperative 2-player mode, which is still fun to this day, and you can see Kevin and I dominating at here, and you've got one of the most enjoyable beat-em-ups of all time. For my money, this NES brawler is right up there with the classics of the genre, like Double Dragon and Streets of Rage. Of course, as the title suggests, this isn't exactly an NES original. In fact, it's actually a port of the TMNT arcade classic, released the same year as Konami's first Ninja Turtles game for the NES, and there are a few differences worth noting between the arcade game and this port. For starters, the title was obviously much better looking in the arcades, but it still looks fantastic on the NES. The levels are detailed, the colors are vibrant, and the character sprites are just incredible for the platform. Sweetening the deal further for NES owners, Konami created an all-new snow level exclusive to the NES version, and included a $5 Pizza Hut coupon with every copy. And that was awesome, righteous, and bossa nova. In fact, my mom let me cash that sucker in for some bodacious deep dish action that day. Pizza, Ninja Turtles, and awesome video games made a very happy little Derek. It was tough to get over my shell shock and enjoy the first Turtles game for the NES. I mean, to enjoy that one, it took years. This one took seconds. It's not quite the masterpiece on the NES that it was in the arcades, but even in the shadow of its coin-operated big brother, this game has sliced up an impressive legacy in its own right. After all, they're the world's most fearsome fighting teens, they're heroes in a half shell in their green, and their finest moment on the NES is the classic Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game.